This video is about. The mom stood near the music festival, and a rich stranger bought her coffee. If this story touches your heart, please mention where you are watching from in the comments. Please like the video and share your thoughts in comments. The sun had barely begun its ascent over the sprawling expanse of the city when Lila stepped into the vibrant chaos of the annual music festival. The air was thick with the anticipation of the crowd, an intoxicating mix of anticipation and rhythm. She could feel the bass of the distant stage thrumming beneath her skin, a melodic pulse that resonated with a long-buried part of her, a part that craved connection, solace, and perhaps a fleeting escape from the responsibilities tethering her to reality. With the hum of voices surrounding her, Lila adjusted the strap of her worn leather shoulder bag, a well-loved companion that held more than just the essentials. A sketchbook, a couple of pens, and a well-thumbed novel. It was her lifeline, a bridge to her dreams. The festival was a rare opportunity, a moment suspended in time where the world opened up, and she could breathe in the creativity that thrived around her. Yet, beneath her excitement lay an undertow of anxiety, a whisper of self-doubt that reminded her she was here as a single mother, not an artist or a free spirit. "Hey, Mom, can I get a lemonade?" shouted her 7-year-old son, Max, darting ahead. His enthusiasm cut through her reverie like a knife through fog. "Just a minute," she called back, her voice steady despite the flicker of anxiety in her chest. As she hurried to catch up with him, Lila couldn't help but smile. Max was a whirlwind of energy, a tiny tornado with a wild mane of curly hair that bounced as he ran. His laughter was infectious, and for a moment, it pushed aside the weight of her worries about tomorrow's bills or the constant pressure of balancing work and motherhood. They reached a colorful stall where a cheerful vendor was pouring fresh lemonade into cups adorned with happy faces. While Max's eyes sparkled with delight at the sight of the bright drink, Lila rummaged through her bag, feeling the familiar sting of disappointment as she counted the crumpled bills in her wallet. "2 lemonades, please," she said, forcing a smile while she handed over the cash. Her heart sank slightly as she calculated how much she could spare for the day. The festival was a luxury, one they could only afford occasionally. "Mom, can I have a pretzel too?" Max asked, his eyes wide with hope. And for a fleeting moment, Lila considered it, imagining his joy as he sank his teeth into the warm bread. But then, reality crept back in. "Let's wait until after the next band, okay? We'll try to find something to eat after that," she replied gently, masking her regret with a grin. Max pouted, but she could see the acceptance in his gaze. He took a sip of his lemonade, and the bright smile returned as he discovered the sweet tartness of his drink. As they moved through the festival grounds, the sounds of guitars strumming and drums beating filled the air. Artisans displayed their crafts nearby. Laughter floated from various corners, and every new scent wafting through the air was a temptation. Lila felt the magic of the moment tugging at her heart, but there was a nagging thought that pulled her back to the mundane. She needed to find a way to make this day last without sacrificing too much of tomorrow. "Mom, look!" Max pointed enthusiastically at a group of performers dressed in colorful costumes, their feet flying as they danced in sync. Lila followed his gaze, her heart swelling with pride as she watched him clap along, caught up in the fervor of the music and the joy that enveloped the festival. It was then, amidst the rhythm of laughter and drums, that she noticed him, a tall figure clad in a crisp white shirt and dark jeans that seemed to gleam under the sun. His presence was magnetic, and Lila found herself momentarily captivated by the way he moved through the crowd with effortless grace. He was striking, with tousled dark hair framing a face that looked both serious and playful, as if he held secrets that could change everything. "Mom, can we go closer?" Max tugged at her hand, his excitement palpable, and before she could respond, he was already dragging her toward the performers, weaving in and out of the crowd. Lila followed, her heart racing for reasons she couldn't quite understand. Perhaps it was the thrill of the festival, or perhaps it was something else entirely, something that felt fresh and new and terrifyingly out of her reach. As they danced their way through the throngs of festival-goers, Lila stole glances back at the tall stranger, who seemed to be watching them with an amused smile. Just as they reached the front of the stage, the music surged, and the crowd erupted into cheers. Max jumped up and down, trying to catch a glimpse of the band as Lila settled beside him, her heart still racing. There was a warmth in the air that hinted at possibility, an electric charge that wrapped around her, and she could almost ignore the responsibilities waiting for her back at home. But as the band played, her thoughts danced to the stranger. He was no longer just an enigmatic figure. He was a rich stranger, a man of the world who likely had no idea what her life was like. She shook her head slightly, trying to clear her mind of the thoughts that threatened to spiral. "Do you like this song, Mom?" Max asked, his eyes wide with excitement. "It's great, isn't it?" she replied, forcing herself to focus on him, on the joy radiating from her son. Sometimes all of her distractions melted away when she looked at Max, and she was grateful for that. As the set drew to a close, Lila felt a nudge against her shoulder. She turned, surprised to find the tall stranger standing next to her, an easy smile lighting up his features. "Nice moves," he said, gesturing to Max, who was now dancing with abandon. "Thanks. He's got the energy of 10 kids," Lila replied, her heart doing an odd flutter. She could feel the warmth radiating from him, a magnetic pull that sent her thoughts scattering. "I'm just trying to keep up." "I can tell," he said, chuckling softly. "I'm Julian." He extended a hand, and Lila felt a spark of connection as she took it. His grip was firm, and there was an intensity in his gaze that made her breath catch. "Lila," she replied, her pulse quickening as they held each other's gaze a moment longer than necessary. "Pleasure to meet you, and your little dancer over there." He nodded toward Max, who was now attempting to spin in circles, his lemonade forgotten in the excitement. "Yeah, he lives for moments like this," Lila said, her heart racing for reasons she didn't quite understand. There was a flirtation in the air, a chemistry that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. "I can't blame him. There's something magical about live music." Julian watched Max with a fondness that warmed Lila's chest. "Is this your first festival?" Lila hesitated, weighing her words. "It's our first one in a while. We usually don't have the time or the money. But I figured it was worth it for a little bit of fun." "Fun is worth every penny," he replied, his tone sincere. "It's easy to forget that life is supposed to feel good sometimes. Or to feel good about your life," she added, a hint of vulnerability creeping into her voice, revealing a side of herself she rarely shared. Julian's expression softened, and he leaned in slightly, as if the world around them faded into the background. "So, what do you do when you're not here, juggling your job and your little whirlwind?" "I'm an illustrator," she said, the words spilling out before she could overthink. "Mostly children's books. It's a labor of love. But it doesn't pay much." She shrugged, the weight of her reality creeping back in. "I love it, though. It gives me a chance to escape into other worlds." "Sounds incredible. I'd love to see your work someday." There was a sincerity in his voice, a genuine interest that made her pulse race. "I could send you a link," she offered, caught off guard by the warmth flooding her cheeks. "I'd like that." He flashed a smile that made her stomach flutter. Maybe I could buy you a coffee later, to discuss art and the trials of parenthood." Lila's breath caught in her throat, and for a moment she hesitated, torn between the thrill of the invitation and the echo of practicality that reminded her of her responsibilities. But she could see the kindness in his eyes, the genuine desire to connect. "Sure, I'd like that," she finally replied, her voice steady despite the chaos swirling inside her. As they exchanged numbers, Lila couldn't shake the feeling that this moment was the start of something unexpected, something she had yearned for but hadn't dared to imagine. And for the first time in a long while, the weight of her world began to lift, if only just a little. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a warm orange hue over the festival, Lila felt a lightness in her chest she hadn't experienced in years. The sound of laughter and music filled the air, wrapping around her and Max like a comforting embrace. Julian had walked away moments ago, promising to text her, but the lingering warmth of his presence remained like a gentle glow. "Mom, can we go watch the next band?" Max tugged on her hand, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "Please. I hear drums." Lila chuckled, shaking off the remnants of her thoughts about Julian. "All right, lead the way, little drummer boy." She followed Max, who darted ahead, his small frame weaving through the crowd with the kind of enthusiasm that only children possess. As they made their way to the stage, Lila took a deep breath, inhaling the aroma of popcorn and cotton candy mingling with the scent of fresh grass. It was intoxicating. The energy of the crowd surged around them, and for the first time in a long time, she felt untethered from her worries, as if the music had the power to carry her away from the burdens of daily life. They settled on a patch of grass near the stage, and Lila pulled out her sketchbook, resting it on her lap. Max bounced on his toes, eagerly awaiting the performance that was about to start. She flipped to a fresh page, and as the first notes of the band's song began to fill the air, she found herself sketching absent-mindedly, her pencil dancing across the page. "Mom, look, I'm dancing," Max shouted, twirling with abandon, his arms flailing as he lost himself in the rhythm. Lila looked up, her heart swelling as she watched him. He was a whirlwind of joy, radiating such pure happiness that it was infectious. "You're amazing, bud," she called out, her laughter blending with the music. As the band launched into an upbeat tune, Lila's focus shifted back to her sketch. The crowd pulsed with energy, movements flowing together like a living painting. She captured snippets of the dancers, the musicians, the vibrant colors of their outfits, the faces of festival-goers lost in the moment. It was an escape, a world where her worries faded into the background. But as much as she tried to immerse herself in her art and the music, her mind drifted back to Julian. The way he looked at her, the warmth of his voice, it lingered like a sweet melody she couldn't quite shake. "Max, how about we grab some food after this? What do you think?" Lila asked, watching her son's delighted expressions closely. "Pretzel," he yelled, his eyes going wide with hope. "All right, a pretzel it is," she said, smiling at his enthusiasm. "I just need to check my wallet first." "Mom, you're the best," Max declared, flinging his arms around her neck, and Lila squeezed him tightly, her heart bursting with love. Moments like these reminded her why she worked so hard, why she fought through the exhaustion and the constant balancing act. As the band finished their set, the crowd erupted in applause, and Max clapped vigorously, his joy contagious. "Can we go up front, Mom? Please?" "All right, but stay close," she warned, rising and grabbing his hand. They navigated through the throngs of people, the music throbbing in their chests like a heartbeat, drawing them closer to the stage. As they reached the front, Lila caught sight of Julian across the way, talking animatedly with a group of friends, a drink in hand. He seemed utterly at ease, the sunlight highlighting the contours of his face, and Lila felt a flutter in her stomach at the sight of him. "Mom, look! That guy is dancing funny!" Max exclaimed, pointing at a man in a bright yellow shirt who was swaying wildly to the beat. Lila laughed, shaking her head. "He's got his own style, that's for sure." Max giggled, his laughter infectious, and for a moment, the world around them faded. Lila felt a hand on her shoulder, and she turned slightly to see Julian standing beside her, his eyes sparkling with amusement. "Mind if I join you two?" he asked, a playful grin spreading across his face. "Not at all," Lila replied, her excitement tempered by a hint of nervousness. Max was just pointing out some interesting dance moves. "Ah, the yellow shirt guy?" Julian laughed, glancing over at the dancer. "I had my eye on him too. He's got a certain flair." "Right," Max chimed in, his little body bouncing up and down. "It's like he's dancing with the wind." "Exactly," Julian agreed, crouching down to Max's level. "It's all about feeling the music, isn't it?" Max nodded vigorously, and Lila couldn't help but admire the effortless way Julian connected with her son. It was the kind of moment she had dreamed of, someone who could share in their joy without pretenses. The next band took the stage, a lively tune filling the air, and Max tugged at Lila's hand. "Can we dance, Mom?" "Of course," she replied, and together they bounced to the music, their laughter mingling with the notes. Julian watched with a smile, his gaze warm and inviting as he joined in, swaying to the rhythm. "Hey, Max, I have a challenge for you," Julian said, his tone conspiratorial. "How about a dance-off? You and me?" Max's eyes lit up with excitement, and Lila felt a swell of gratitude toward Julian for encouraging her son's playful spirit. "Okay," Max shouted, puffing out his chest as if readying for battle. "All right, on 3, 1, 2, Julian counted, and as he said 3, he burst into an exaggerated, goofy dance, flailing his arms and spinning in circles, his laughter echoing in the air. Max joined in, trying his best to replicate Julian's moves, and Lila couldn't help but laugh. It was pure, unfiltered joy. 3 souls dancing freely, the music wrapping around them like a warm embrace. As they danced, Lila felt a connection with Julian that was electric, a chemistry that thrummed beneath the surface. He had a way of drawing her out, of making her feel seen in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. Okay, Julian said, laughing and waving his hands in surrender. "I concede, you win, little man." Max jumped up and down, his face flushed with delight. "I won. I beat the grown-up." "Absolutely! I think you should start a dance class for adults," Julian teased, ruffling Max's hair. "Maybe I will," Max declared, his eyes wide with ambition. As the music continued to play, Lila felt herself drifting closer to Julian, the distance between them shrinking as they shared in the joy of the moment. "Your son is amazing," Julian said, his voice low, almost intimate as they stood side by side, watching Max twirl with glee. "You're doing a great job with him." Lila felt warmth rise in her cheeks at his compliment. "Thank you. I try my best. It's not always easy, but moments like this make it all worthwhile." Julian nodded, his eyes thoughtful. "I can only imagine. Balancing everything must be tough. But it seems like you're doing it wonderfully." "Some days feel heavier than others," she admitted, vulnerability slipping into her tone. "But I just keep hoping I'm giving him the kind of life he deserves." "You are," Julian said firmly, his gaze steady on hers. "Max is lucky to have you." The sincerity in his voice made her heart race, and she felt a rush of warmth flooding her chest. "Thank you, Julian." Just then Max ran back to them, breathless and full of energy. "Can we go get that pretzel now? I'm starving." Lila ruffled his hair, smiling at his enthusiasm. "Sure thing. How about we all go together?" "Yay!" Max cheered, and Lila turned to Julian, her heart thudding in her chest as she met his gaze once more. "Are you in?" she asked, a hint of hope threading through her words. "I wouldn't miss it for the world," Julian replied, his smile infectious. As they walked toward the food stalls, Lila felt the gentle pull of possibility lingering in the air. The weight of her reality momentarily lifted. With every step, she could sense that something wonderful was unfolding. Something that was more than just a fleeting moment at a festival. It was a connection, a spark, and an invitation to embrace the joy that life had to offer, even amidst the chaos of her world. And as they strolled together, with Max chattering excitedly about the pretzel he was about to devour, Lila found herself daring to hope that perhaps, just perhaps, this was the start of a beautiful new chapter. As they meandered through the bustling festival grounds, the scent of warm pretzels wafted through the air, pulling Max along like a magnet. Lila watched her son's small figure dart ahead, joyous and oblivious to the world's complexities. The festival had become a kaleidoscope of colors and sounds, vibrant against the backdrop of her typically monochrome life, and Julian's presence added an unexpected depth to the experience. "What's your favorite kind of pretzel?" Max asked, glancing up at Lila, who smiled down at him, her heart brimming with affection. "I think I'd have to go with the classic salted pretzel," she replied, her eyes glimmering with warmth. "But I don't mind some cheese dip on the side. What about you?" "I want the biggest one," Max declared, puffing out his chest, his eyes sparkling with determination. "With extra mustard." "Wow, aiming high there, huh?" Julian chimed in, chuckling at Max's ambition. "I see a budding food critic in the making." "Absolutely," Max beamed, thrilled to have Julian's attention. "One day I'll write a book about pretzels, but first, I need to eat them all." Lila felt a laugh escape her lips, warmth spreading through her as she watched Julian kneel down to be at Max's level, their rapport growing effortlessly, like they were old friends reconnecting after years apart. "Well, you've got a solid plan," Julian said, "but you may want to add some variety to your pretzel intake. There's a whole world of flavors out there beyond just mustard, you know." Max's expression turned thoughtful. "Like what?" "Like garlic butter." Julian paused for dramatic effect. "Or cinnamon sugar with icing." "Yeah, I don't want sweet," Max protested, scrunching his nose, and Lila felt a surge of laughter bubbling up within her. "Trust me, you'll love it once you try it," Julian insisted, a playful glint in his eye. "But maybe save that for dessert, huh?" Okay. Max relented, and Lila felt a pang of gratitude for their growing bond. Julian had a way of inviting joy into their conversation, effortlessly weaving between adult and childlike laughter, making her heart flutter with a mix of admiration and intrigue. As they reached the pretzel stand, the vibrant colors of the stall seemed to beckon. Lila took a moment to appreciate the scene. The vendors' cheerful demeanor, the hum of voices, the tantalizing aroma enveloping them. It felt like the world was alive, dancing to the rhythm of the festival. "3 huge pretzels, please," Lila said to the vendor, her smile wide. "1 with extra mustard, 2 plain, and 1 with cheese dip." The vendor grinned, swiftly preparing their order, and Lila felt the excitement bubbling within her. She turned to Julian, who was watching her with an amused expression. "Are you always this enthusiastic about food?" he teased lightly. "Only when I'm not counting my pennies," Lila admitted, her smile turning a touch sheepish. "I mean, it's not every day we get to indulge like this." "I get that," he said, his tone shifting to something deeper, more understanding. "We all have our sacrifices, but you deserve to enjoy these moments without guilt. Everyone does." "Easier said than done," Lila replied, her heart racing at the depth of his gaze. "Sometimes it feels like joy doesn't come cheap." "It shouldn't be a trade-off," he replied, his voice low but firm. "Life is meant to be savored, especially the little things." As the vendor handed them their pretzels, Lila found herself captivated by Julian's earnestness. His words resonated with a part of her that had been silenced for so long. Maybe it was the way he looked at her, as if he truly understood the weight she carried. Maybe it was the comforting warmth emanating from his presence. "Here you go, Max. 1 giant pretzel with extra mustard," Lila said, handing the most oversized pretzel to her son, who accepted it with glee. "Thanks, Mom. This is the best day ever," he exclaimed, taking an enormous bite, mustard smeared across his cheek. Julian laughed, his eyes dancing with amusement. "See, you're already a food critic in action." Max giggled, his mouth full, and Lila couldn't help but smile at the sight. It was moments like this that made the struggle worthwhile, the laughter, the joy, the fleeting feeling of freedom. As they found a nearby bench to settle down, the sounds of music pulsed through the air again, wrapping around them like a warm embrace. Lila took a deep breath, feeling a sense of contentment wash over her. "So, Lila," Julian began, his gaze steady on her. "Why children's books? What draws you to that world?" Lila paused, the question drawing her in. "I've always loved storytelling," she said, her fingers tracing the edge of her sketchbook absent-mindedly. There's something magical about creating a world where imagination knows no bounds, where anything is possible. And kids, they believe in that magic so wholeheartedly. I get that, Julian replied, his eyes sparkling with curiosity. It must be rewarding to know your work impacts those young minds. It is, she nodded, feeling a smile tugging at her lips. But it can also be challenging. Sometimes I feel like I'm lost in my own stories, trying to balance the reality of being a single mom and pursuing my passion. I can only imagine how tough that must be. Julian leaned in, his expression earnest. But it sounds like you're doing an incredible job. Your creativity is a gift, and Max is lucky to have a mom who inspires him. Lila felt a warmth flood through her. His words felt like a gentle hug, lifting the burdens she often carried. Thank you. That means a lot to me. Do you ever think about writing stories that are more adult? He asked, his tone shifting slightly, as if he were probing a hidden part of her. I've thought about it, but it's daunting, she confessed, vulnerability creeping into her voice. The thought of exposing my inner thoughts and fears is intimidating. Why not? Everyone has a story to tell, right? Julian's gaze was unwavering, and Lila felt the weight of his words. You have such a unique perspective. I'd love to read something penned by you. Maybe I will, she said softly, her heart racing at the thought of someone like Julian being interested in her thoughts and creativity. But I think for now, I'll stick with what I know. Children need stories to escape into, just like I do. They shared a comfortable silence, each lost in their thoughts, as Max continued to devour his pretzel, his laughter echoing around them. Can I ask you something personal? Julian finally broke the silence, his voice low and serious. Of course, Layla replied, curiosity flickering in her chest. What's the hardest part of being a single mother? He asked, his gaze searching hers. Layla hesitated, her heart tightening. I think it's the loneliness that comes with it, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. It can be isolating, especially during those late nights when the weight of it all feels too heavy to bear. I yearn for connection, for someone to understand what it's like to juggle everything. Julian's expression softened, and he nodded as if he understood. I can see how that would be tough, but you're not alone. There are people out there who care and want to support you. Her heart fluttered. It's hard to let go of the fear of being vulnerable again. Vulnerability is where the beauty lies, Julian said softly, his voice filled with sincerity. It's where real connections are formed, and it takes courage to embrace it. In that moment, Lila felt a profound sense of understanding between them, a bond that transcended the chaos of the festival. Julian's words wrapped around her like a gentle embrace, and she was struck by the realization that she hadn't truly connected with someone in a long time. Thank you for saying that, she said, her voice thick with emotion. It's refreshing to meet someone who gets it. Anytime, he replied, his gaze unwavering, a warmth flooding her chest. I'm glad we met today, Lila. She felt a blush creeping up her cheeks, warmth pooling in her stomach as their eyes held. The energy between them thrummed, a current she couldn't ignore. But just as she was about to say something, anything, Max jumped up and pointed toward the stage. Mom, look, the next band is starting. Lila and Julian both turned to see the stage erupt into a burst of color and sound as the next band began to play. Max bounced excitedly, his joy reinvigorating the moment. Let's go, Lila declared, standing and intertwining her fingers with Max's. We can't miss this. Julian fell into step beside her, and as they made their way to the front again, Lila felt a mixture of exhilaration and nervousness swirling within her. It was as if the world had shifted slightly on its axis, and she found herself daring to hope for something more. The crowd cheered as they approached the stage, and Lila could feel the pulsating energy surrounding them, a wave of excitement that swept her away. Max's laughter danced through the air, mingling with the rhythm of the music, reminding her of the unfiltered joy that could only be found in moments like these. As they reached the front, Lila found a spot that allowed her to see the band clearly. She leaned down, her shoulder brushing against Julian's, and the innocent touch sent a thrill through her. The band was dynamic, the lead singer's voice soaring above the instruments, and Lila felt the music wash over her, carrying her away from the weight of her responsibilities, if only for a little while. "This is the best," Max shouted, his eyes wide with awe as the lead guitarist launched into a solo, fingers flying across the strings. "Right?" Lila replied, her voice barely audible above the roar of the crowd. She glanced at Julian, who was watching her intently, a smile playing at the corners of his lips. There was something electric about the way he looked at her, as if he could see the parts of her she kept hidden. "Have you ever tried playing an instrument?" he asked, leaning closer so she could hear him over the music. "I tried the flute in school, but I was terrible at it," she confessed with a laugh. "I have a friend who plays the guitar beautifully, though. I'm always in awe of how music can tell stories without words." "I get that. Music has a language all its own," Julian said, his gaze never leaving hers. "It can evoke feelings in us that we didn't even know were there, kind of like art, I suppose." "Exactly," Lila replied, feeling a warmth spreading through her chest. "I think that's why I'm drawn to both. There's a way to connect with others through creativity that transcends the mundane. I'd love to see how you express that in your illustrations," Julian said, his voice low but sincere. "I'm sure there's a whole world in your sketches waiting to be discovered." Her heartbeat quickened at his words. "You really think so?" she asked, a hint of disbelief creeping into her voice. "I don't just think so. I know so," he replied, his expression earnest. "You have this passion inside you that shines through. It's inspiring." Lila felt her cheeks flush, and she turned her attention back to the stage, trying to mask her growing vulnerability. But the warmth of Julian's gaze lingered, a reminder that there was someone present who saw her, not just as a mother or a struggling artist, but as a woman capable of so much more. The band finished their set with a flourish, and the crowd erupted into applause, a wave of sound that reverberated through the air. Max was jumping up and down, his small hands clapping above his head. "That was amazing!" he shouted, his excitement infectious. "Can we stay for the next one?" "Absolutely," Lila replied, ruffling his hair. "We're here for the music, right?" "Right." Max beamed, and she turned to Julian, who was also smiling at the boy's enthusiasm. "Looks like we have an enthusiastic fan on our hands," Julian remarked with a chuckle. Lila nodded, her heart swelling with affection. "He's always been this way. Music brings him alive, and I love seeing him so happy." "It's beautiful," Julian said, his tone thoughtful. "Music has a way of healing, doesn't it? It's like a balm for the soul." Lila met his gaze, the intensity of his words sinking in. "It really does. There are days when I feel overwhelmed, and I just need to escape into a melody or a story." "Escapism is important," he replied, his eyes softening. "It helps us find ourselves amidst the chaos." As the next band set up, Lila felt a shift in the air, a soft tension that hung between her and Julian. It felt like they were standing on the precipice of something new, something that both frightened and exhilarated her. "So, what do you do for fun when you're not taking care of Max or working on your art?" Julian asked, breaking the momentary silence. She hesitated, considering the question. Fun felt like a foreign concept lately. "I don't have a lot of free time, honestly. Most of my days revolve around work and Max, but I try to find little moments to enjoy, like this festival, or when I can sneak in a quiet evening with a good book." "Books are a great escape," Julian agreed, his tone carrying a hint of nostalgia. "What's the last book you lost yourself in?" Lila smiled at the memory. It was a fantasy novel about a young girl who discovers a hidden world filled with magic and adventure. I loved how the author captured the essence of hope and belonging. "Sounds intriguing," Julian said, leaning in slightly, his interest piqued. "I love stories that transport you, make you believe in the impossible." "Exactly. Sometimes it feels so good to forget about the real world for a bit," Lila said, her voice a bit wistful. It's like being wrapped in a cozy blanket of imagination. Do you ever think about writing your own stories? Julian asked, his eyes sparkling with curiosity. Sometimes, she admitted, but I'm not sure if I have what it takes. It feels daunting putting myself out there. Listen, Julian said, his voice firm yet gentle. You have a voice that deserves to be heard. Writing is just another form of art. If you can illustrate stories, why not write them too? Lila's heart raced at his encouragement. You really think so? I know so, he replied, his gaze steady. You have so much to give to the world. Don't let fear hold you back. A silence settled between them, charged with an intensity that made her breath hitch. In that moment, she felt a raw honesty between them, a connection that transcended the festival and the music surrounding them. Just then, the next band started playing, their upbeat rhythm pulling Max back into a fit of excitement. Mom, can we dance? He shouted, grabbing her hand and tugging her toward the stage. Come on. Lila laughed, letting Max lead the way. She glanced back at Julian, who followed closely behind with a grin, and her heart fluttered with anticipation. As the music enveloped them, Lila lost herself in the rhythm alongside Max, their bodies swaying and moving in harmony. Julian joined them, dancing with a carefree abandon that made her laugh. There was a lightness in the air, a sense of freedom that seemed to unfurl like petals in the sun. See, you're a natural, Julian teased, his voice playful as he twirled Max around, their laughter mingling with the music. Lila felt a warmth gathering in her chest, a mix of joy and something deeper that she couldn't quite grasp. It felt good to be immersed in the moment, to forget the worries that often weighed her down. As the beat pulsed through the air, she caught Julian's gaze, and there was an unspoken understanding between them, an acknowledgement of the joy they were sharing, the connection that was forming amidst the chaos. Max spun away, lost in the music, and Lila found herself stepping closer to Julian, their shoulders brushing against each other as they danced. The energy between them crackled, an electric spark that sent her heart racing. Do you believe in magic? Julian asked suddenly, his voice low, drawing her attention back to him. Magic, she repeated, intrigued. Yeah, not fairy tale magic, but the kind that comes from moments like this. Unexpected connections, spontaneous joy, he elaborated, his expression earnest. I think it exists if we're open to it. Lila searched his gaze, feeling the weight of his words. I want to believe that. It's just hard with everything else going on. I understand, but sometimes it takes stepping outside of our comfort zones to discover the magic waiting for us, he said, a softness in his voice that made her pulse quicken. As the song came to a close, the crowd erupted into cheers, and Max was jumping up and down, his joy radiating. That was awesome, he shouted, his face flushed with excitement. Can we go on the Ferris wheel now? All right, let's find it, Lila replied, laughter bubbling up within her as they made their way through the crowd. As they walked together, Julian fell into step beside her, their shoulders brushing against each other again. She felt that familiar flutter in her stomach, the connection growing stronger with each passing moment. You know, Julian began, his tone light but sincere. I'm really glad I met you today, Lila. You have this incredible spirit that shines through, even amidst the chaos of life. It's refreshing. Her heart raced at his words, and she felt an unfamiliar warmth flooding her. Thank you, Julian. I didn't expect to connect with someone like this today. It's been nice. Nice? He echoed, a playful smile on his lips. I was hoping for something more profound, but I'll take it. Lila laughed, feeling buoyed by their banter. Okay, it's been magical then. Is that better? Much better, Julian replied with a grin.